Good morning everyone, I'm Jason Gonsalves and today we are going to talk about Sula, basically the settings and the binary oppositions that we come across it. Before we learn about Sula in detail, I would like to talk about Toni Morrison as she is the author of Sula and she has also written Beloved, which has gained a lot of fame and population to her name, and she has won many prizes such as the Pulitzer Prize, etc., and has contributed widely in the field of the English literature. Talking about the novel Sula, we learn that initially the blacks lived in Mid Island, but later were asked to shift to the bottom where the whites initially resided. So why is this shift? Now initially we think in the novel we come across a small passage wherein it is believed that the black farmer was told by the white farmer that he will be given a place known as the bottom, where as a reward in doing his duties. So on working hard, later he realized that he obviously gained bottom. He realized that the bottom was actually the top part of a mountain, on a mountain, which was totally barren and infertile, and it couldn't be of any use. So later what justification was given was that the heaven is closer to the mountain and thus it is the bottom. So on this pretext, we see how a farmer was cheated of his on the wordplay of the bottom, wherein he was of the opinion that he will be getting the place, the plain area which the whites possessed. So coming to so this is one of the binary oppositions that we see. There is a wordplay with the word bottom, and the whites who were initially on the mountains have shifted to the place known as the Mid Island, and they have driven off the blacks from there and have told them to settle on the mountain which is known as the bottom. In the beginning of the novel, we come across Shadrach as a character who has been serving in the World War I, and after doing his duties, he is seen returning back to Ohio, to the bottom, and we see how he is treated in a hospital. So basically, he goes through PTSD, that is post-traumatic stress disorder, wherein he starts seeing things differently and imagine things. And in the hospital where he's supposed to be taken care of, instead he is slightly looked by the doctors and all, but he is not fully recovered when he is released, and he is released on the pretext of having no rooms or having no beds in the hospital. So we see this ironical occurring wherein in natural ways we see how people go to the hospital to get themselves recovered, but in this case, in this novel, we see how the faculty of the hospital drives a patient away just because he is belonging to a colored a community, and yeah, this is one of the binary oppositions. Coming next, we have when Shadrach is walking on the road, we see how the police comes in and arrests Shadrach because they feel or they assume that Shadrach is under alcoholic influence or intoxicated, and instead of helping him, asking him what is wrong with him, or taking him back to his home, we see how he is taken and he is just put into jail and is arrested. And yeah, this is some of the binary oppositions which I have seen in the novel. Secondly, no, it's not secondly, third. So he starts this National Suicide Day, which occurs on every 3rd of Jan, and wherein he calls people of similar thinking, of similar mindset, to march along with him in order to commit suicide. So basically, all those who are never happy, with whatever things occur in life, just like Shadrach. Shadrach, now after the war, he does not know what to do, so he's lost. So similarly, he calls people with like-minded the mindset, and yeah. So this is ironical, wherein he calls people to commit suicide and end their lives. Like that, he is celebrating a sad day. Now, normally we celebrate all happy events like the Republic Day or the Independence Day, and here we see how he celebrates something that should not be celebrated. So this is the irony in the first scene that we come across. In 1920, when we come across Helen Wright, who is the mother of one of the important characters in the novel, that is Nell Wright, she is seen joining a black conservative church in Mid Island, and which also points out the binary as a binary opposition, that Helen Wright being a white person of a white skin color joining a church belonging to a blacks. So this is another binary opposition to point out. The next thing is the encounter with the white ticket collector, wherein we see Helen and Nell going on to visit their ill grandmother Cecil, but on the way they meet the racist ticket collector, and he doesn't say much, but he tries to make them feel inferior for joining in the wrong boogie. And the next instance is where they see a group of soldiers looking and staring at her. So they belong to the black community once again. And now there is another binary opposition, is that Nell and Helen being scared of soldiers. So normally when we see when we Indians, when we see a person belonging to the army or the soldier, we instantly go and salute him as a gesture of respect. But here we see how Helen and Nell are scared of soldiers who do their duty to protect the citizens of the country. And yeah, this is a binary opposition once again. In the same year, we see how Nell speaks about Sula entering her house being from the black community. Now we know that blacks and whites had never a good relationship together, but we see the special bond between Nell and Sula as friends. Like how Sula used to enter Nell's house and sit sit without any fear and all. And whereas Nell in her own house used to not like her own house, and whenever she used to go to Sula's house, she used to never discriminate Sula, and she used to like all the things happening in her surrounding, like the small chula on fire or the messy surroundings, etc. So this is one opposite things which we see, that is the white person going and making friends with a colored person or a black person, and accepting each other the way they are. So this is one binary opposition which we come across in the year 1920. Now moving on to the next year, 1921. 1921, we get a description about Sula's house, wherein we see it's a total mess as compared to Nell's house. We see Sula's house as one room having 3 doors, and certain rooms having only 1 door, and the other parts of the house cannot be accessed through certain rooms, etc. And now it shows that this symbolizes total chaos and mess, and And also the next thing to note is that Sula's grandmother, who is disabled, she has only one leg, and she is made to stay on the third floor of the house. Now, normally when we see physically disabled people, choose to live on the lower floor, so most probably the ground floor. But here we see how differently abled person, the Sula's grandma Eva, she goes and she stays on the third floor, which also shows the authoritative rule in the family. And yeah, this can be seen as one of the binary oppositions in the novel. So in the same year, we see how Eva kills her son Plum because he returns home from war again. He used to work as a soldier, and on returning home from the war, we see how he gets into drugs, alcoholism, and he totally destroys his life. And looking at this, his mother Eva cannot hold back her emotions, and she feels that killing him will be the best option in order to obtain peace. She thinks, she loves him the most, and he is one of the favorite childs of Eva. And we see that one day she goes to his room, and he's still fully intoxicated, and looking at his state, it is of great pity. And Eva goes in and gets kerosene and sets him on fire, and which is where he meets his end. Now in the following year, 1922, we see a person named Ajax who will catcall people and Eve tease them. And we see Nell and Sula slightly getting of a mature age, and when they are passing by, Ajax starts catcalling at them, and he calls them pig meat all the time. And to which Nell and Sula, they do not act too much, but then they are shy and they just move on from them. But later we see how another group of boys try to do the same thing to Nell and Sula when they go to and fro from school. But Nell does not like it, and one day she is harassed and she is almost injured. But then we see how Sula coming along with her and fighting, sort of rebelling with those boys. And in order to prove her anger and what she could do to an extent, she goes and she cuts a piece of, just the top portion of her finger, wherein it looks like a sort of a mushroom. And looking at this, those boys get scared, and they run off from there. And this is how we see how Sula and Nell try to be with each other, and Sula tries her best to be friends with Nell. Now secondly, also it's the season of winter, and we see Nell and Sula wearing short dresses. So normally in winters, we see that people wear long clothing to cover themselves, and we also see that Nell and Sula are going to a place to have ice cream. So these are some of the binary oppositions. In the year 1923, we see that Hannah, that is Sula's mother, gets a dream of wearing a red wedding gown and celebrating her wedding. And soon after which we learn that she meets her end by her dress catching fire, and Eva, Hannah's mother and Sula's grandmother, she watches all this thing occurring, and so she jumps from the third floor to where Hannah was lighting the fire. So here we see how a disabled person tries to save or a differently abled person tries to save her children. We see a stark contrast wherein initially she sets Eva sets her son Plum on fire, and now we see the same case wherein she's trying to save her from getting burnt alive. So this is a binary opposition which can be seen very vividly in the novel Sula, and we see different forms of love through this. Initially, she says that she cannot see the state of the sorrowful state of Plum getting into drugs and all, and so she kills him. And now we see how Hannah, almost dying, Eva jumps from the third floor to protect her and to save her. But then she is unsuccessful in doing so, and we see how Hannah, passes away on the way to the hospital. So now we can see that how the red wedding dress, the red wedding gown, proves to be fatal for Hannah. And also in the Goan tradition, if in case a married woman dies first than the husband, we see that they are dressed in a red colored gown, and for her funeral, they prepare her for her funeral. So this is similar to that of what we as Catholics follow, and especially in Goa. So now the red dress also symbolizes death, some believe, as a red gown can symbolize full of blood, wherein in the case of Hannah we see how she was almost burnt, and the color red plays an important role there. So this is another a binary opposition, so to say, we see in the novel Sula. So moving ahead, in the year 1927, we see Nell getting married to Jude Green, and Jude Green is someone who works as a waiter in a hotel in Medallion, but he expresses his ambition to work for the construction of a new road that is taking place between the Medallion and the bottom. And the same year we see that Sula also leaves the bottom in order to go to the city to complete her further education. And here we see it's in those days when Nell's wedding is taking place. Sula, instead of waiting and attending the whole wedding, she thinks of moving away from Nell and setting up her life in the city. So this is another aspect of the binary opposition, where we see Sula being her best friend, Nell's best friend. She couldn't wait for her wedding, but on the same day they have to separate from each other in order to meet their goals. So moving on to the part 2 of the novel, we see in the year 1937 Sula returning back from the city to the bottom, and we see she interacts with Eva first, her grandmother, but then they soon get into a verbal sort of a fight, and Sula decides to put Nell in a nursing home, not because she has a fight with her or she hates her, but because in fact she's scared of her. Now why she is scared of her? Because initially Sula has seen that Eva setting up Plum on fire and killing him, and as a result she is scared that she too might do this to her, that is Eva might kill Sula, and as a result she puts her in a nursing home, and which also shows her concern for Eva, and or else she would have just chosen to live her own life, but she does not do so, and instead puts Eva in a place where she can be taken care of. This can be seen as a binary opposition once again, because there are two separate things happening. One is that Sula is coming back to the bottom, and she puts in the first thing she does is she puts Eva in the nursing home, not because she is frightened, I mean not because she has fought with Eva, but then because she is frightened with her. So the next thing that happens in the same year is the peace in the whole of the bottom has restored, and similarly in the medallion, because people used to think that Sula will steal people's husbands and children, and she will get them attention, and people never like this, especially women. So whatever the women in the house started acting, they started showing love to their husbands and their children, and so we see how Sula brings in a change in the society, and this is a binary opposition, so to say, wherein the whole life, which was usually when Sula had left the place, we see how people tend to get into get people together, and they do not act normal when Sula returns back. So in the normal days we see how the people just don't care for their loved ones, but as soon as Sula returns, they start loving their children, their husbands, and also that Sula may not take advantage of the same, or they might not go away from their loved ones. Now in the previous year we have seen how Sula takes advantage of Nell's friendship, and she goes and sleeps with her husband. In this chapter, that is in the year 1939, we see how Nell says goodbye to her husband Jude, where they both part ways, and all this thing happens in a normal way, not in a vulgar fashion, where Nell never shows anger towards Jude because he betraying her and sleeping with Sula, but she's more angry on Sula because she has breached her trust of being a loyal friend and also taking advantage of sleeping with her husband Jude. Coming to the final year in the novel, that is in 1965, we see that Nell goes to pay a visit to Eva, Sula's grandmother, and to her surprise she learns about the incident about accidentally killing Chicken Little in the river. Now apart from Sula and Nell, nobody ever knew about this incident, and being true loyal friends, she feels betrayed once again by Sula, and she is deeply pained, and she feels that Nell is accused for killing Chicken Little, but in the case we see that Sula was the one who who loses the grip of Chicken Little, and he swings in the river. But so to say, Nell also is guilty for the crime that they have committed, and again we see innocence as well as guilt together, and which are two totally different things. An innocent person can never commit a crime, and guilt is something that will never come across if a innocent person has ever committed a crime, because they are totally two opposite things. So this also makes up for a binary opposition in the novel. So lastly, I would like to talk about Sula Peace and how her name is paradoxical. For instance, Sula never lived a peaceful life and in her childhood, and we see that when she grows up, she almost destroys Nell's family and her peaceful environment. The term binary opposition refers to the pair of terms differentiated by oppositions to one another, to which it is often used as a technique in evaluating literary works. Instead of being used mutually exclusive, the binary opposition often complements each other, and they try to portray the highlights by contrasting each other. So with this we come to the end of the novel Sula, and I hope I have covered all the binary oppositions present in the novel. And yeah, that's it, and thank you for watching this video.